You want to know what shock feels like? Try pulling into your own driveway after a 3-week trip abroad, only to find the curtains changed, your doormat missing, and a strange silver SUV parked right where your old Toyota used to sit. I barely had time to process before I saw smoke curling up from my backyard grill. And that's when I spotted a guy I'd never seen in my life flipping burgers like he owned the place. My key wouldn't even fit in the front door. For a second, I honestly thought I had lost my mind, but nope. A woman came out holding a deed, smirked, and said, "Can I help you? This is private property." And she actually laughed, waving some paperwork. "We bought it last week through your HOA. You ever felt your whole world shatter in the span of one sentence? Yeah, that happened. Let me back up a sec. I'd just gotten back from visiting my mom in China. 3 weeks of calm, home-cooked meals, not a care in the world, and apparently just enough time for someone to steal my life out from under me. The only person besides me who had a spare key was Layla Lewis, the HOA president. You ever deal with an HOA drop in the comments where you're watching from what time it is? And hit subscribe if you've ever butted heads with a power-hungry board, because this is a wild ride. That first night I didn't sleep. Not a wink. I sat in a sticky motel room off Highway 6, the smell of old coffee and cheap pine cleaner giving me a headache, papers spread out across the bed. Deed mortgage statement. Every HOA receipt I'd paid for 3 years highlighted, stapled, looking for any clue that might explain why a stranger was grilling in my yard, and I was stuck paying by the hour for a room with flickering lights. My war with the HOA. It didn't start with anything dramatic, just my grass growing half an inch over their limit after a week of rain. $100 fine like a parking ticket from the Phantom of the Lawn. I measured that grass with a tape measure newspaper and frame, sent photos, and got back a cold little email from our new president, Layla. All properties must maintain community standards. Non-compliance will result in additional penalties. Community standards, huh? Layla could weaponize anything. Mailbox height, paint swatches, even the color of your garden hose. She ran Willow Creek Estates like a queen on a tiny chessboard, smiling in the newsletter, scowling in real life, always itching to hand out a citation. Most folks just kept their heads down. Not me. It's not that I like conflict. I'm a software engineer. I like things neat and logical, but nothing about Layla or the way she twisted the rules ever made sense. I kept pushing back, quoting bylaws, asking for board minutes, demanding she rescind the fines. When polite didn't work, I got thorough. Binder tabs, photos every HOA meeting. I even asked for a line item budget. That's how I learned that sometimes power sticks around because people agree not to ask questions. The only neighbor who ever had my back was Steve. Quiet, patient guy, coached Little League. He told me stories how Layla once called a tow truck on a nurse who parked just a foot over a line while helping an old resident, and then forced her to apologize for ruining the aesthetics. So when I told Steve I was headed to China for a few weeks to check on my mom, he said he'd keep an eye on my place. I left him the key, texted him my flight info. I even emailed the board that I'd be away, that Steve had the key, and yeah, you guessed it, reminded them not to enter without my written consent. I did everything by the book. Willow Creek had always required a duplicate key for emergencies. The welcome packet even had Layla's face next to that rule. Should have known that was a warning, not a courtesy. 2 weeks before my trip, Layla ramped it up. Certified letter on my porch, delinquent HOA assessment, wound $500. I nearly laughed. My dues came out automatically, first of the month, every month. I printed my bank statements, my payment receipts from the HOA portal, marched them to her office. She didn't even offer me a seat. Just sat there behind her glass desk, smiling like she'd already won. Clerical error, she said, but her tone had an edge. Still, Daniel, you've been a bit of a distraction this year. She said if I paid the balance, she'd make it right. I said not a chance. She just shrugged. It's not about money, she said. It's about standards. Yeah, standards. The night before my flight, I sent one last email out of the country. Steve's got the key. Please email any notices don't enter without my permission. Landed in Beijing, hugged my mom, drank hot tea, and didn't think about Willow Creek. Not until I came home and found my life gone. Back at the motel, I replayed it all. The couple in my house, Derek and Hannah Thompson, weren't scammers, just regular folks, house hunting their way into my kitchen, waving a closing statement with my name, a notary stamp, and signatures that looked like mine if I'd been in a car wreck. The price, 30% under market. I called the police. They were polite, professional, but useless. On paper, this is a clean transaction. It's a civil matter unless we find fraud, which meant get a lawyer. I called Steve. Turns out he got called away for a work emergency right after I left. Layla told him she'd keep an eye on things. Suddenly, everything made sense. I checked my email, and there they were, messages from me authorizing showings a power of attorney to sell my home and notary confirmation. The emails read like me, even the way I hyphenate follow-up, but I never sent them. The sender IP matched the HOA office. I screenshot, printed, backed everything up. And on the HOA portal, zero balance. Paid in full. But there was one new document, a power of attorney executed by Layla, authorizing her to sell my home. The signature almost matched except for a tiny notch in the W of Wong, something I always do. This one was too clean. Forgery. I made a list, call the county recorder, get a copy of the deed file, a police report, find an attorney, and hardest of all, tell my mom only what she needed to hear. At the recorder's office, the clerk was sympathetic, like she'd seen this movie before. The quick claim deed transferring my house was signed by me, witnessed by Cheryl the notary, all official. The new tax address was the Thompsons. She advised me to file an affidavit for identity theft and talk to a real estate litigator. That night I laughed out loud when I got an HOA email, Community Beautification Inspection, 9 a.m. Layla sold my house out from under me and still scheduled me for a yard check. The gall. Next morning, I emailed the board retaining counsel today. And that was the start of my real war. My lawyer, Kevin Adams, was the twist I didn't see coming. A friend of a friend, mid-40s, tired eyes, brilliant mind. I brought him everything: forged deed, fake emails, HOA logs, even the IPs. He nodded, tapping his pen. This is organized fraud. Someone with access, motive, and means, and the listing agent on your file, Layla Lewis, the buyer's agent, her nephew, Travis. Classic. Turns out Layla's run this racket before using HOA authority to create debt scare people into giving her power of attorney, then selling the place for a song to a connected buyer. The Thompsons were just the latest mark. Kevin filed a complaint, got an injunction to freeze the title, sent the HOA a demand to preserve all records. Within a day, Layla called all sugar and venom, acting like I was the unreasonable one. Daniel, you're creating a mess. Why not just settle quietly? Yeah, not happening. Steve, guilt-ridden, brought me a USB drive. His wife's security cam caught Layla and two men moving boxes out of my place in broad daylight the week I was gone. We showed the footage to Kevin, who started digging. Soon other neighbors came forward. An elderly widow said she lost her house after a clerical error Layla promised to fix. The pattern was clear: fake fines, power of attorney, quick sale profit. Classic white-collar theft dressed up as community management. Detective Ramirez from the county fraud unit joined in. We've had complaints, but nothing this solid, he said. Suddenly, it wasn't just about my house. It was about every home Layla had ever targeted. Kevin and I built the case. He even brought in a handwriting expert who confirmed the signature was a stylus forgery. The real clincher: wire transfers from the Thompsons' payment went straight to Layla's LLC and then into her personal account labeled commission. As things heated up, Layla got desperate. She tried to paint me as a liar, suspended my HOA membership, even got her board cronies to accuse me of harassment. Socially, I was radioactive. Neighbors, whispered Facebook groups lit up with conspiracy theory posts. She even showed up at my motel sunglasses on like a mob boss checking her territory. But arrogance makes people sloppy. A week later, her nephew Travis left Kevin a voicemail by accident about moving files before the investigator comes. Obstruction intent caught in her own web. Ramirez got a court order to seize the HOA computers. Within days, we had all the proof we needed: fake fines fabricated, emails, doctored paperwork, a whole archive of fraud. Layla cornered, lashed out with defamation lawsuits and a glossy newsletter painting herself as a victim. But our evidence just kept stacking up. When her nephew Travis realized the feds were circling, he flipped, handed over everything: emails, text messages, bank logs. The fraud ran deeper than I imagined. Over 7 years, Layla had taken almost $2 million from scared elderly or absent homeowners. The trial was surreal. I took the stand, told my story: the fake fines, the missing furniture, the sleepless nights, the sense of being erased. Layla, still trying to charm, claimed she was just keeping the community afloat, just a few mistakes. But the jury saw through it. Guilty on 23 counts. 15 years in federal prison, $2.1 million restitution. The HOA collapsed. The board resigned in disgrace. You'd think that was the end, right? But real life isn't a TV show. For weeks, the neighborhood was chaos. No one knew who'd mow the lawns, pay the bills, or fix the pool. That's when Steve and the others came knocking, petition in hand. Nearly everyone signed. "Daniel, we need you to rebuild this place," he said. Me, the guy who fought the HOA, now running it, poetic justice, I guess. So I did it. First order of business shredded, half the bylaws burned, the old rule book made every meeting public, every transaction transparent. We put up a new sign at the entrance home. Sweet. Home. No cars allowed. It was a joke, but also a promise. Never again. Willow Creek slowly turned back into a community. Kids played outside. People waved. I finally slept through the night. Months later, I even got a letter from Layla herself from prison. She said, "Power makes people forget who they are. I hope you never become like me." I stood in my yard, beer in hand, grass wild and green, and realized that's the lesson. Don't let the fight turn you into your enemy. So let me ask you, have you ever had an HOA nightmare? How did you fight back, or did you just let it slide? Drop your stories in the comments. And hit subscribe, because as long as there are Karens with clipboards, there's always another story to tell.